So what is insecure attachment?
Okay, if we think of secure attachment as confidence that the caregiver, the person you rely on, is going to be available and responsive, insecurity develops when that's not the case. Now, it's quite simple because there are two things you can do when you're insecure. One thing you can do is kind of cling harder. It's called ambivalent attachment. It's ambivalent because there's a desire for connection, but a sense of frustration and maybe deprivation that you really want to make sure, boy, if you're going to get your needs met, you have to kind of make a fuss in order to do it and stay close to the attachment figure. Okay, so that's one thing you can do if this consistent responsiveness is not forthcoming. The other thing you can do is decide, okay, I'm going to manage on my own. If I'm hurting, I'll deal with it, and I'm not going to seek out comfort when I'm feeling threatened. That's called avoidant attachment. So the interesting thing to me is that by 1 year of age, that these children have figured out what's the best strategy to relate to a caregiver when you're feeling distressed, by 1 year of age, before language is really on board.
Well, how do these different attachment styles develop?
Well, let me just give you a couple of examples. The ambivalent style could develop, say, with inconsistent caregiving, so that sometimes the caregiver is available and sometimes not. Or the caregiver may respond only when you kind of ratchet up the distress. Or like, well, I can get mom or dad to pay attention if I climb a tree and dangle from a branch. I mean, I'm kind of exaggerating. But learn that, okay, this is the way to get my needs met. The avoidance strategy could develop, for example, when the parent consistently rebuffs the child's bids for comfort when distressed, kind of sending a message, look, I'm happy to be with you, but boy, not when you're crying, not when you're hurting. It's kind of, they learn not to be a bother. So it has to do with the caregiving. And see, the same infant might relate in a securely attached way to one parent and be insecure with another. This is this very early social learning.
Yes, and you said that this develops by the age of 1. Does that change?
Well, yes, it changes, absolutely. Sometimes I say in patient education groups that if attachment couldn't change, we may as well close the doors to this clinic. And it does change, and it changes in fairly predictable ways. That is, let's say you have a secure attachment, say with mom. But then something happens in the mom's relationships that leads her to feel threatened or insecure, or say she's ill or develops a psychiatric disorder or gets depressed or something like that. Something that interrupts the relationship then could move the child from feeling relatively secure to feeling more insecure. And conversely, a child who is insecure, then when the parent becomes more available and responsive, can move to security. So this is a very hopeful idea because we see the flexibility in attachment that is evident in the first year of life. And so what we need to do is work on relationships so that basically people become more consistently available and responsive to each other in those periods of distress. That's the key.
So it's best to have a secure attachment.
Well, I would qualify that. Yes, we do need secure attachment relationships because if you go back to the hand-holding, it's like this is the most potent way that we have of managing distress. But we also need flexibility because it wouldn't make sense to behave in a secure way with everybody. It doesn't make sense to reach out to people who are not going to be responsive and helpful and caring. So we need to learn these different strategies. We need to learn sometimes you need to make more of a fuss if you're going to get somebody to meet your needs. Sometimes it's best to keep some emotional distance to preserve the relationship. So it's these adaptations to the conditions of the relationship that I think that's really the strength of attachment, is flexibility. But we do most need, I think, some secure relationships.